I'm Dr. Roberta Lindemann. I'm a GP trainee in the Fort William programme in the north of Scotland.
How does a girl from Brazil end up in Fort William?
So I moved to Scotland when I was 17. My parents drove me from Southampton up to Aberdeen over a couple of weeks, visiting different medical schools, and we decided Edinburgh was the nicest place to live, but also had one of the best medical schools in the world. After living in Edinburgh for 5 years, decided for a change of pace, move over to Glasgow, try something a bit different again. I was there for 2 years before choosing to move up to the Highlands. It's a beautiful place to live, but also it's a challenging place to practice medicine, and I felt that this would be a great place for me to really increase in my confidence and learn how to be the best GP I could be. Initially it was the medical school that attracted me over, but after being in Scotland for 5 years, you kind of fall in love with the place. The Scottish people, they're fun, they're fair, they're generally very welcoming and very respectful, and that's been really important. They've really made me feel part of the community. They've welcomed me in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting, and I know you wouldn't necessarily get anywhere in the world. I changed my mind a lot when I was a medical student. I started off wanting to be a surgeon, then a plastic surgeon, and then a gynecologist and obstetrician. So I think that's natural, people do change their mind. But by the time I started my foundation training, I realized that I wanted to learn about the whole range of different conditions that affect people, and I didn't want to specialize. That was important to me. I felt like that was a challenge. That was the biggest challenge there was in medicine, was to have to be good at everything, and that would keep me interested over my entire life. So there were two things about general practice. One is looking after families over time that you don't see in A&E, you don't get that continuity. But the other one was also the independence you get with general practice. So it meant I could live anywhere really in the world. It meant I could live in a small community with 100 people, or I could live in a big city. And I had that freedom, I had that flexibility. I could also choose any contractual model I wanted to work in, whether that was salaried or partnered. I was sponsored by NHS to do the basics course. So that means that I just feel better prepared to look after people in the pre-hospital care environment. If I happen to be driving down the road and see a road traffic accident, then I feel better prepared to be able to offer help and give that person the best chance of surviving. Fort William is a beautiful place. The scenery is just spectacular, but also it's a community that's just the right size. There's about 20,000 people in Fort William, so it's small enough where you feel part of something, you get to know people, you look after families, but it's also kind of big enough that there's enough going on to keep things interesting. The main reason it's challenging is because we're 2 hours away from our big hospitals or tertiary centres, and the clinical teams we're working with in the community, there might not be as many people as you would find in the big cities. So I think as a GP you end up taking on a bigger responsibility for your patients than you might in an urban environment. I have found that the medical educators in rural places are really dedicated people, from the clinical supervisors, educational supervisors, and the training program directors. They're really there to support you. NHS in the north of Scotland has a particular interest in really trying to make sure you have the best possible experience. They offer an out-of-programme experience with the Rural Track programme that gives you that opportunity to spend 6 months tailoring your programme to whatever it is that you feel you want, further skills you want to develop. It's surprisingly well connected. With train links to Glasgow, Edinburgh and London, you can get to the big centres if you want to go for a course or if you want to meet up with family, or get onto an international airport for your holidays. If you are an outdoor person, then there's plenty to do out here. You can go hill walking, hill running, kayaking, sailing, or climbing, mountain climbing. In the winter there's just as much to do with the skiing, ice climbing and winter mountaineering. So the great thing about Fort William is that there's activities that you could get involved with all year round. I was brought up in a big city with lots of traffic and lots of cars and noise, and I wanted the opportunity to live in a place like this and just try it out, just see what it was like. And the problem is once you've experienced this, you can't really go back. Once you're used to living in this beautiful scenery, it's a bit of a one-way road. There's no job like it in the world.